Hi, long time no see.
Yeah, she's was missing in an action.
Yes, I'm back
Um,
now. Thank you for the links, by the way. They do work. I don't know what was going on with my Dropbox, but I the links you sent me work for both the practice and the final, so I appreciate it.
okay, sure, no worries. I told them to send it in. Um, yeah, case studies. These are, um, I think they're not that many. We can finish it today, and it's going to be fun. Hopefully, you will enjoy it. It's not a test, really. It's just opinions, what you think. Just make your best guess with answering some questions. There is content that we'll be reading first. And so you know that this has to do with copyrights. I don't know, Steve, did you read it? Did you get a chance to go through it or no, not yet? But we can read it
Yes,
now.
yes,
Right?
I did. I got a chance to go
You
through the
did.
first two. Thank you for sending them. I appreciate it.
Most welcome. Let's see now. It's talking about a scenario where someone is making photocopies of a book. So we read it, um, we see that Ronald, or we can just quietly read it, just giving it a few minutes, see if we can go through it quickly. I haven't read it like recently, so I have to read it also. Yeah, so Ronald seems to be a good guy. You know, he knows that what professor is asking for him to make copies of a book that's considered to be infringement of someone's copyright. So Ronald knows that it's not the right thing to do. And then I guess he tells the photocopying guy also that might be a problem and he ignores it, if I'm reading it correct. And then eventually he goes to a friend that tells him that, he should not be quiet about it, or he should be quiet about it. Well, he says he's be quiet about it. Yeah, that's his opinion. Knowing well that it's a blatant infringement of someone's copyright. Even if it's an educational material, if it is something that you would otherwise end up buying for a price outside of that, you know, without copying it. So obviously there is a commercial value attached to it. Now, what could be the answers for the questions that are set 1 through 5? There are 5 questions, and then we have multiple choices of possible answers, and you should be able to just pick one as an answer. So with the first one, it says, what is the copyright infringement issue in this scenario?
I say A.
Photocopy. A. All right.
Uh, hmm.
What do you say, Cora?
uh,
I'd say I
I
get
I would say C.
what C. Okay, photocopying for the purpose of education. Now, in the unless you see there are different types of copyright laws that depends on what is the author's permissions in case of allowing someone to copy their work. Um, and in and I don't know if you know that there are some of these GPL licenses or public licenses that allow you to copy things. on certain conditions, and the conditions can vary. And there are different flavors to it, like just the GPL or GNU permissions, we call it, are public permissions, or even Creative Commons supports that. That's another type of the infringement contract, which is assumed or which actually exists in a public domain. But with all those licenses, even if they're public licenses, there are restrictions, like you can not, some of the restrictions would just allow you to use it for educational purposes. Others would say it cannot be commercial purposes. Some would allow you to build additional material on top of that and use it as a base. And so there could be different variations. But in the case of books which are published, or mostly printed books, especially the educational books, they come for a price, and you have to pay even if you're a student. So there is no GPL license, or there is no public license attached to those books, and therefore they cannot be copied, right? So in this in the first one, I'd say A should be correct. C, I don't think that would work. In the second question, it says, which right of the copyright owner is violated in this scenario? So the copyrights gives certain rights and privileges to whoever the author or the owner of that intellectual property is. And those owners have the public right to display their goods or their work. They have a right to reproduce their work. They have the right for public performance, like it could be a song also, so in that sense, or a drama of some sort. But all three, A, B, and C, are actually the inherently these rights are given to anyone who has produced the original work, and therefore automatically has the copyrights and the conditions of copyright that allows for the owner of that intellectual property to do things. Three of them are listed here outright. It's A, B, and C. So in my opinion, or in your opinion, let's say, what would you say the correct answer for the second question? A, B, and C, and D. What would be the
D,
correct one? Yes, I would say so too. So I can't mark it because it just keeps jumping. So we know D for the second and A for the first one. In the third one, it says, who is responsible for direct copyright infringements? We've learned about three types of infringements, and all three have a different different I guess extent or strength of liability that is actually claimed by the plaintiff if copyrights are infringed. One of them is direct copyrights, which has a higher liability or a higher amount of damages that the plaintiff can claim. Then there is a contributory infringement, which is the second type, and then there was what was the third one? I forgot. The direct infringement,
vicarious.
and vicarious. So vicarious is, slightly less of a damage, and one can get away with it. Somewhat there is a gray area. So the question number 3, how would you answer that? In this case, who is responsible for direct copyright infringement? So there are different characters in this. There's professor, there is photocopying guy, there is Ronald, the student, and then there is a friend of Ronald.
The
So
direct
who's
copyright infringement would probably be the university professor, since he's the one that first took this material that was copyrighted by the author and turned it over to the copy shop owner.
Yeah, I agree.
right? Right. But let me just ask you then, if the student was well aware of the fact that the professor is instigating or is asking to do something that is illegal, or in the best judgment of Ronald, he knew that he's doing something wrong. Isn't it the same if someone tells another person to go and you know uh, just pick something from a grocery shop and not pay for it, or steal it from the grocery shop, and the person, knowing well that it is wrong, goes and does that. So I'd say that if someone is telling you to do anything illegal and you're aware of the fact that it is an illegal act, you should not be doing it, right?
Right.
That's just my
Contributory.
opinion.
That is true.
Uh,
Yeah. I
mm,
mean, the copy shop owner's the one is pretty much allowing everything to occur like it wouldn't happen without him in the first place. You know, the professor would
so
have to
I
go
think
elsewhere.
correct. I think I don't know. We can do one thing though. Let's just mark it in three colors, because I'm going to send you the answers later on. We don't want to debate the answer, but we'll just take the opinions. So what Carol is, this is you, Carol, right? You are
Yes.
fine with second one. So let me just put it like this. And this is what Steve is saying. So I'm going to
Correct.
mark it with, okay. All right. So that's fine. And this is what I somewhat agree with B, but I'm just going to leave it open and just take your answers as if I have to get back to you and tell you who was right and who's, but this will be emailed. Okay. So we don't want to say who's right, who's wrong. So I don't bring the answers. I'll just send it, email it.
We won't
What
we
in
won't
the
take
opinion?
we won't take offense, Naveed.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty much kind of standard. It's become standard now. But anyway, and I don't have them handy. I have him, but I have to pull him out. But let's say, let me just mark this one as correct anyway. So I'm going to. mm, So this we don't have to debate. One and two was okay. So the fourth one says, who is responsible for contributory infringement? Contributory is not direct, like it's not like outright copying someone's work, but whoever has handed it over to you as a custodian or someone that is to use that product or that book, but someone else where it is going to pass on, it's going to get passed on to more than a few people, or where, someone not being fully aware whether they're doing anything incorrect, or they're assuming that, the copyrights, it's been authorized. So that assumption without taking a responsibility of, um, verifying whether or not it's been authorized. That's
I say
contribute.
B.
Hmm. Okay.
I guess I would have to. It's tough. I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna say the professor then, I suppose.
Okay.
Just switch it up.
So I'm going to do this for Steve and this for Carol. Do you want my opinion also?
Yes,
I mean,
please.
I could be wrong too. So, who is responsible? I'd say in the contributory sense, uh, yeah, the copy shop owner, I'd say. That's my opinion. Uh, in your opinion, can this be qualified as fair use?
I say no.
Yeah, I got to agree.
I think this is correct then. Now, that's you know kind of that's how you would get some questions in the exam. They'll be and they'll give you plenty of time to read it, I'm sure, because they have by the way, they also are going to grade you based on the number of correct answers. So it's like, let's suppose that this is one question. I'm sorry, let's just say this is one case that is coming to you as a question, and then you have multiple choices set exactly as you're seeing it now. So literally there is like 5 questions to one, five choices to one question. So when you are correct in question 1, they're going to give you a grade for that. If you are incorrect in question 3, they're not going to deduct anything from your grading. All you will end up getting is the only mark which is set, which is for the correct answer or the correct question answer. So it is going to be, fractionally, they're going to add that mark so you don't lose anything. Of course, for something that is coming to you as one question with multiple choices, you wouldn't know if it's, if unless all are correct, usually people think, or students might get the notion that, if they didn't get any one of them correct, the entire question will be marked as 0 or no score. But that is not the case. You will get graded on whatever answers are correct. So just so you know, then we have another one, and this is about link copying. Now, you remember when we talked about piracy, caching, linking, framing it? That's, or do you want me to, well, let's see if you can answer it, and then I'll see if I can explain it better in case you forgot or, can't remember well. So Larry is a professional freelance photographer for an award-winning wildlife and nature magazine called Natural Heritage. Just keep reading. He also has a website where he posts interesting images he captures when traveling around the world on the web. He even provides links to his images within the website. Although these pictures, he has captured them or published copyrights images that belong to the publisher. Intention is to share his passion for nature with those. So Larry actually has a deal with a magazine called Natural Heritage, and the publisher of that magazine is technically the owner of the work that Larry delivers. It's not something that Larry should be using unless he has an explicit permission from the publisher. Literally, he's buying the work as having the exclusivity. So there has to be, I mean, because there is not a whole lot that they can write and they want to make it concise, you may have a few questions in mind also, but you have to make your best assumption. My assumption is that the Larry is, does not have the exclusivity after he sells it to Natural Heritage or the publisher, whoever that person is. One day, the publisher of Natural Heritage magazine was searching the internet when he suddenly came across Larry's website. He sees the link that Larry had provided on his website, linking a natural. Okay, has not sought consent of the publisher prior. Let's be a friend of the publisher. So here the publisher warns Larry, about the legal implications of linking copyrighted material without permission and asking him to make a formal application to obtain permission. Fair enough, I think. Feeling offended, Larry argues back, stating that he captured those images and therefore does not require permission from anyone to share them with the public. Wrong, I'd say, totally. I mean, I'm sure he's under contract of some kind with the publisher, and he's just acting emotionally on this. Although the publisher repeatedly asked Larry to either obtain permission formally or remove the links from his website, Larry refuses to do so. Finally, the publisher is compelled to file a copyright infringement case against Larry. Larry was ordered to pay the publisher a considerable sum of money as fine and also had to pay a fine for the website since he refuses to remove links to the copyrighted photograph. Fair enough, I think, in the way it is dealt with by the publisher. I'd say that, well, let's look at the questions. What is the copyright infringement case in this situation? It's linking, isn't it? Or is it
Yes,
caching or piracy? Right.
linking.
Linking means that you are linking to a work that belongs to someone else, or there is a logo on a website that you're clicking on, or for the users you are asking the user to click on it, and the user think that the ownership of that logo, or somehow the reason why that logo is sitting on that web page is because this site page or this domain has a business relationship, or has something to do with having a distribution rights. Anything that has a link or anything that is clickable, even if it takes you to another site or another page, or even if that link is sitting on someone's website illegally, that is linking. Because linking works both ways. It's linked out and linked in. LinkedIn, but not the LinkedIn, inbound links and outbound links. Both of these, it's a two-way situation. And either way, linking process should be avoided unless you have explicit permission. Framing is, again, something that you are displaying on your site when it is playing on someone else's website. If your YouTube is playing on the YouTube platform and you have a link that is bringing it into a frame, and the player is sitting on your own website, and it is actually playing a file which is running on the YouTube. So that is framing. Then the second one, we have Larry is responsible for what? Larry is responsible for direct copyright infringement, contributory, vicarious, none of the above. I'd say,
I say direct.
I would
before I say
say
it,
B. I would say contributory.
okay. How about you, Steve? What do you think?
I say A.
Okay. So,
Although they are his photographs, the owner, he's no longer the owner. The publisher
correct.
of Natural Heritage is the owner.
True. Agreed. I do agree. Because you see, the moment that photograph is handed over, or there is a transaction or anything that is contractually fulfilled, and the transaction is concluded, the ownership changes. And if Larry is the party that is directly connected with that product and he is responsible for causing that infringement, I'd say that he is stepping into the rights of the publisher directly, and therefore, Carol, contributory copyright means that someone is not directly responsible or directly copying it, but like in the photograph, what was it? In the photocopying situation, there were parties involved. So they were contributory. There was more than one, and one that knew about infringement was less responsible, and the other one who assumed that there is a permission of some sort from the professor, so that the guy who is, or the photocopy shop is assuming that it's okay for him to copy it because that's his job. He's just making copies. He's not supposed to be verifying if he can or cannot copy
Okay.
something.
I
That
get
could
it.
be contributory.
Yeah, I was thinking, oh, someone could easily save that copyrighted material on this person's like website, even though he shouldn't be directly linking it. or finding other ways to capture that with the visitors to a site. And maybe that with those visitors would be contributory, but I get what you're saying now.
Yeah. So it would be A, and I agree with Steve on this one. Then we have 3. What is the linking related copyright infringement in this situation? Linking related copyright infringement. Larry
I
provides
say
links
A.
in his website. Yeah, that's what it says in the description also, doesn't not? It says that he has linked it to his website. So it's outrightly, the first one, because that's exactly how it is actually, um, you know, explained in the paras, in the first para. Larry refusing to remove the links. No, but let's read through B, C, and B and C also. Second one says Larry refusing to remove the links from his website. Refusal to remove the link has, I mean, that's an act of um, the sort that it's after the cause or after the event. So B is little late. A is where the linking infringement happened. Larry arguing, the C says Larry arguing that copyrighted images belong to him. I don't know, these B and C sound silly to me, kind of, in the sense that it is probably there to confuse you, because it's after the event. But what we need is to look at where the infringement happened. So linking related infringement happened in A, straightforward. Linking the website to copyrighted images. A is correct answer for 3. Then fourth, what can Larry do to seek permission from the publisher?
I say
How do
C.
you get the permission? How do you generally, how we get the permission to reproduce something or to use somebody's work, like borrowing someone's material, using it, even if it's for educational purposes or not, or for, putting it in the article as, I mean, not citing it directly, but assuming that one can use it to build upon or make it part of the book. Does it have to be quoted and referred to, or you have to give, credits, where you're getting it from? So, what could be the best way to obtain any sort of permission to use that material? Um, Generally, what we do, what I did, and what I was advised from my attorneys writing the book. Obviously, there was some work that I had to borrow from somewhere. See, what you do is you send them an email electronically asking their permission to use something. You send them a reminder. Then, at the same time, it's best to send them a letter also asking for a permission. So the period is 30 days, and that's about it. So in 30 days, if someone does not respond, you will have to, by default, you would have to give some credit, or you have to give a link or give a citation of where you borrowed it from. And at the same time, you have to write a statement, a legal statement in the book or wherever you're using it, for anyone who has, problem or something that they're not, they think that their copyrights are getting infringed. They would be able to call us, let us know. So normally what happens is the other parties send you a letter. They don't outright go and sue you. It's never like that. Even in trademarks, it's not exactly, that if there is an infringement of sorts, they're just going to file a claim. The protocol is that you will receive some letters and you have to respond to those letters. Either you would accept it as if, you're willing to pay for it, or under terms that they would offer to you. You would have to either accept it, and if you don't, then you will have to take it off. In the case of printed material, it's very difficult to, just um, disassemble your whole work, because that's a written work. Um, and it's all connected. So you have to definitely have to get a permission or wait for it. But if you don't get a response like after third letter that you send out, that makes it 45 days. So 30 days is the period, 45 days is, when you are sending your third and final reminder. If you don't get anything back and you have said in your letter that you are going to use it, but you're going to give credit for or put a citation, and if they have a problem they can respond, and this is the last attempt. So there is a format for it. So correspondent has to go electronically as well as in the form of letter. That's given, like that's standard. What can Larry do to seek permission from the publisher? So what would Larry do?
C.
B here, B
No,
or
C.
C?
Yes,
C,
C.
yeah, C, obviously.
It's got to be in
Yeah,
writing.
because yeah, it has to be explicitly agreed. It has to be written. Um, then we've got what is the benefit of linking. Link allows quick and easy access to information. Link appears nice on the web page. Link allows secret access to other websites. All of the above. It does far too many things to help someone's website, if especially if it's a branding or it's something of prestige that makes your site look better. So
Does
all
it
of the
really
above.
do? Does it really
Yeah,
do
yeah, it
C
does.
though? It's not really a
About
secret access. I mean, a link is no longer a secret access, correct? I mean, if
yeah.
it's on the
No, but
page, it's not really secret.
yeah. See, what link does is that now it has become a nuisance in terms of how funnel marketing works these days.
Ah,
So
okay.
it is, I guess, in that sense, where it is going to lead you from one site to another, and that increases the clickability of other web pages. It also lands you eventually to a product which is similar or is a competitor's product, and it is priced, it's very comparatively priced, and so on and so forth. So basically, this is part of it. Like, one of the things that they do. There is it's good for you to know, Steve, especially. Like, do you heard of something called reverse baiting? Reverse baiting is a
Yes,
kind of
yes.
a, yeah. So what happens is that you send out a link or a photograph or something that is clickable. Somebody clicks on it and then you capture it. The information is brought back to you. You get to see where the IP is, and then you can track that person. It's just letting you know about how the links get you into the traps. Piracy is outright copying someone's material illegally. Okay, so Justin is a division head of Stewart Score, an audit firm with 80 staff members. After attending the annual staff meeting, he was told that his division has very high expense compared to the rest of the risk. The senior management asked him to start budgeting carefully. Okay. Therefore, he reflects on the meeting, highlights and discusses with the finance director, and he is very. So it's a software. He's trying to get smart with using single license to work over 30 computers. That's what Justin is planning to do to reduce cost and look good. The publisher finds out Stewart Corp has only purchased one copy of licensed, though there seems to be multiple users. See, when somebody used to buy single licenses for a company and let others use the same software. They can do it through centralized computers. When earlier, now the security has become more sophisticated, but before, there used to be a central server, and that server had a copy of that software or the license to that software, which was tied to that one equipment, eh? So, and everybody else would just, access that central computer and use that software. Basically, they were infringing the copyrights. But anyway, in Canada, the liability, there is a difference in how the US courts treat the claim from the software companies for this kind of infringement, where the licenses are split up and many people are using the same thing. And there is a difference in how Canada treats it. Canada would not allow for software companies to go for any punitive damages or any unquantifiable damages for the use of those softwares. So if there were 30 employees using it, one has to prove that it was run by 30 employees from their own machines, and you would end paying for um, those users, and that's about it. But in US, you still have to pay penalties. You have to pay so much more. So I think it's more strict in US compared to Canada. This is what I learned from someone who shared this information with me. I didn't know that this was a big difference. Anyway, if you've read this part, you understand that it is a software license issue. What is the copyright infringement activity that they have carried out? Hacking, piracy, phishing, linking,
Piracy.
piracy. Straightforward. Exactly. Accusing of piracy in this scenario refers to stealing computers or purchasing one software. B. It's very easy to answer. In fact,
Yes.
if you get these type of questions, you can score so well, because here you're getting 5 points. See, versus other questions that'll give you 1 point, because there'll be only, it's weightage would be only will give you only 1 point, but here they'll give you 5. So, and that's a give and take, because you have to spend more time reading this part, eh? That's why they give you 5 points. Choosing a plan this scenario refers to purchasing one software package for multiple users. Okay. That's B. What is the type of copyright infringement the company is liable for? Direct, contributory, vicarious, none of the above. This is
This
tricky
I'm
one.
having trouble with.
Yeah, I am also having a little bit of a dilemma where I feel that I can answer it as A, or I can answer it as B, or even C. You
Yeah,
know
I was going
why?
to say the same
Because
thing.
um, because I mean, anyone who is sitting on the machine as one of the users out of these 30 employees, how would they, or how are they supposed to know that they are infringing copyrights, or it is a pirated, in the sense of how single license is being used illegally by many of them. So vicarious liability, I'd say, would be something that an individual would be liable for. But then on the top, if we read the question, it says, what is the type of copyright infringement the company is liable for? So when they're saying the company is liable for, um, basically, I'd see when it depends on who bought the software. If this guy, Justin, bought it for himself, or the billing or the invoicing was for in his name only, then Justin is responsible, company is not, you see. And company might have a vicarious liability. Um,
I agree.
and then in the case where there is a billing by the company for this software, how is the company supposed to know that Justin is bought it as a single license, and he's, because Justin is the main player here. He's the one who is doing it for saving money on account of the low budgets, seems like. So I
Because the
guess
company,
more.
the
Hmm,
company didn't really know until the
yes,
publisher told them, right?
exactly. And this happens like even in real situations, like senior management or managers, they won't get the budgets approved for a software. In the case of, expensive software, let's say if it is a $50,000 license for the corporate license, and this guy has a budget of 20,000 and he really needs that software. So what is he going to do? I mean, that's going to be probably his job that's going to be affected, or his performance might be affected, you know, as a manager, being accountable for the results, and could do so many things that the company may not know. So if I have to look at it from the point of view of how this little information needs to be interpreted, I'd say there'd be so much more that we could have written to just to make it more precise, so to make it easy for for students to answer these questions. Now I have more questions than I can select the answers for, because I think that this part, or the account of how it is explained, is missing some additional information.
But
So I.
there might be a clue in
Hmm,
the answer to number 4, because number 4 is going to be Justin. So if that's the
hmm,
case, I'm wondering if the
yes,
intent
yes.
of this question was to show us the
Hmm.
difference between the company's liability and Justin's liability.
So Steve, this is where your training is coming in handy. That's where you're picking up the clues, eh? You
I'm
are
glad I got
looking at the
I'm glad
next
I got
generation.
some I'm glad I got something out of the last 50 years.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, you could do much better job than me. Yes, I agree. I mean, that you picked it up quite nicely. I think so too, because it seems that they've given a clue straight out. It's saying that he's the infringer, and that's answering number three. Yeah. But the company is then not a direct infringement, right? Would the company be a direct infringee, or
No,
there's a.
I think your answer of vicarious liability suits that particular case better.
Hmm. Let's just mark it and figure out what the examiner thinks. And I'm going to put it in green. That's no, that's yeah. And we both agree. So green is okay. And then in this one, you said Justin, eh?
Yes.
How about Carol? What do you think on the fourth one? Who is the main copyright infringer in this situation?
Oh, I
You
would
agree with
definitely agree
D?
with Justin. Yeah, with D, because no one else really knew exactly what was going on except for Justin.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, because Justin did the whole thing. He brought the software and he implemented it. Um, what is the risk of using pirated software according to the above situation? A lawsuit can be filed against such individuals. It's compelled to pay a significant fine, potential private and public embarrassment. I like C. I mean, if this was what people would be scared of, now that's where we have ethics, that we talk about later, ethics of the internet. Potential private and public embarrassment. Hmm.
So it looks like maybe D.
Yeah, D. D should be good. Yeah. I mean, some people do get embarrassed, eh? It's not like it's okay. So, but I know a few people who wouldn't mind it though. I mean, they'd be happy doing it. Okay, so all of the above is good answer for five. So let's see. We're going to leave three. Three is what I have to figure out. Let's take a short break. We have three more to go. Once we get that done, then I will just give you an overview of what internet ethics is all about. It's it's probably a subject that is debatable. It is more got a personal opinion side to it. It depends on moral values. What is perhaps um, you know morally acceptable for some people may be controversial for others, and for some they may have a totally different opinion and it's subjective. There are these zigzagging gray and white zones, something that we agree with, others we don't. Some is still controversial. Like, I mean, there is a lot of polarization on certain issues. Um, then there is a religious aspect, there is cultural aspect, there is geopolitical situation that sort of dictates certain things which otherwise certain in developed societies or in democracies work differently. So internet ethics is an open ground depending on how you look at it. So because of it, a lot of opinions, and sometimes students do like to debate about it. But fortunately, we don't have a lot of time to but we can understand what the issues might be, things that triggers, the issues of ethics on the internet, especially with free information and privacies and anonymities and private spaces versus public spaces, um, human subject as a sample, vulnerability of human subjects to be assessed, informed consents that you need to take by law, and so on. So we'll discuss those quickly just to get the concept of what ethics is about. But before we do that, and after the break, we'll finish up three more of these situational sort of slides, just to keep the excitement going. Three more, and that's it. I'll see you in about 10 minutes. I'll give it a break and see you soon. Thanks. Okay, I'm back. If you're all ready, we can continue with
Ready.
this. Okay, so here is a case study 4 for plagiarism. And Carol, have you had, can you read this just quickly so
Who,
you know
me?
what's happening with it? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
You want me to read it out loud or just you want to
no,
show me?
no, just for
Okay.
you to read through. I read my bit.
Sure.
Okay, so we can go to the questions. It's pretty straightforward, I'd say. What is the offense that Todd is liable for?
Plagiarism.
Plagiarism. Yeah.
This is a nice freebie.
And such childish questions sometimes, but good for students. They can, even these sometimes students mark wrong. So I don't know how they do that. What are the unlawful acts he has committed in being liable for plagiarism?
I say
He
B.
had
B.
used he had used direct quotation in the paragraph without sign. Yes, B is correct. He's written paper in a draft. So if somebody wrote something in draft format, it doesn't actually correct the situation. Draft is just for someone to get back and to say that so many things are incorrect, or for it's prone to revisions. So that is nothing to do with the situation. It's just asking directly what plagiarism is. So B is correct. In third one, it says, what are the best practices that Todd may have followed in correcting his mistakes? He uses
B.
only library. He
Yeah,
uses
B.
quotation. Yeah, he should use quotations and paragraphs with proper acknowledgement of the source. Third is correct. Fourth one is something that I would say
I would say D.
probably, yeah, these,
Yeah.
because he could have done all three, right? It still would have rectified the situation.
Right.
But what if you use somebody's work and paraphrase their material, or, just readjust, not using the same words, but write it in your own words after getting the concept cleared up, but probably delivering the same concept that is explained originally, but doing it in your own language. Would that be plagiarism, technically speaking? Just wondering. Uh,
Possibly. I think it depends on like the subject, just because it depends on like the concept. And like I guess if you're to put it in your own words, like how are you putting in your own words? To what extent? I feel like at that point, if you get an idea directly from a source and you decide to use that direct idea in your own work, you have to
mhm.
write it in such a way that actually proves that you understand it, rather than you're just kind of popping it in there because you think it looks good. Like,
Good point.
yeah, yeah,
Good point. Yeah. So it has to have a substance to, even if you're rewriting something, the idea can be written in many different ways. But supposing if it is the idea that is not owned by someone, it is not innovation, it's not a discovery of something new, or you could say that it is to do, as an example, let's take law subject as a subject. In law, you can you cannot change certain things. You know that it exists as a clause which have a legal language to it, but you can put it in your own words for ease of understanding, or for explaining or elaborating on it. But the fact remains that you cannot change the main idea or the objective of that clause, which is strictly within the legal bindings of how the law looks at certain things. So it can be one of those things where, there is no ownership to it. um, it is just the style of writing, or how that idea is interpreted differently from the original source, that would give it an intellectual, or anything that could be owned as an original work of someone. So there is this thing about plagiarism, which is very sometimes becomes difficult to prove, and then it depends on the volume also. Like certain legal cases that I've read, if the plagiarism is maybe 5% of the whole document, it probably would not give rise to legal claims. It just is not and we're just not talking about something that is intellectually as can be claimed uh, as something new, or a new concept. Just talking about in general sense of how you rewrite certain things. So if it is just 5% or 6%, or even up to 10% of it, but people do give references, they do give citations and things of that sort. But even if that is not done properly, then from the claimant's perspective, they're going to look at the material value. If it impacts the entire concept of how the book is, because it shapes up differently with different topics and everything else put together, it is sometimes very hard to actually go and file a claim and win that claim, with a substantial amount of money. So that's the practical side of plagiarism. Sometimes you can get away with it, but that's not ethical, obviously. One has to have that sense of knowing, that just having a courtesy of just writing a link or putting something that says you got it from, an acknowledgement is good enough. What in case you do put an acknowledgement or you do put a citation somewhere, and then the author does not allow it, assuming what is going to be the situation then? I'm have you thought about might be something that just by putting these acknowledgements may not be enough. It may be something that is not agreed by the author or the original, you know, person who you have copied from. So what are you going to do then? That's the problem. So if
Hire a
that
lawyer.
happens, yeah, then hire a lawyer because what will happen is that it's going to be contested with the I mean, it does give rise to a legal claim, but it may not have a damage claim as high, and it could be somewhat a contributory damage. It may not be a direct infringement in the sense of how it is interpreted, uh, because you did give or you were careful enough to let people know that you have borrowed it from somewhere. But there is one more thing that you have to do in addition to giving it the acknowledgements, and that is that you have to put the exact statements or exact para or whatever you have borrowed within the quotations, and you have to write it as is. Like if you're going to distort it, change the language, and you're building on it, that might be another um, another problem or another set of obligations that the legal system would put on you if you have not done it as I just described. It has to be exactly the way it's written. So that could be another reason. Um, in number 4, it says it says what could have been the strategies that Professor Williams had explained to Todd. Put within quotations everything that comes directly from the text. Correct. Paraphrase, but be sure not just to rearrange or replace few words. Can you paraphrase? Well, we don't know what the what the subject was, what the topic is exactly. But I'd say to the extent where you're using your own language, your own words, you can get away with it. Check paraphrasing against the original text. Of course, there is this software called Grammarly that does do things for you, and then there are others that would just take the content. You could just insert it in the box, and it would just rearrange and reshuffle and use its own artificial intelligence to make it appear different so that it's not caught outright by the kind of softwares that check for plagiarism. So a lot of times research papers are done this way. They're using the automation process. I don't know if you know of those softwares, but there are these that I've actually looked up, and they do exist. So all of the above would be correct. Do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 5 says what could have been the penalties for plagiarism can be subject to fine, suspended from university, can fail the course, all of the above. They can do
Yes.
whatever they want.
Yeah.
Okay. Defamation. This is a good one, actually. Martha is a fitness instructor, and I know this one. You can read it if you'd like.
It's good.
Eric doesn't like Martha. Eric is the one who's saying
Yeah,
things.
it gets worse.
Yeah. I mean, how can you control all of this? See, it's so hard sometimes just maintaining your reputation. You know, there is a something called, and there are companies that do this. It's called reputation management. Um,
Oh yeah,
and yeah,
I love
reputation
learning
management.
about that
But
stuff.
all they do all day long is they just start taking out things which people keep putting in against someone, and especially those that are affected by, or their jobs or their contracts may be affected, so they take it very seriously, even businesses, so they give it to the reputation management companies, and once they get that job, it sort of continues. Like, I've seen it going on for years. And still people, it just depends on what you've been doing with others. uh, can get really annoyed people, and they don't leave you. Didn't pay much attention to Eric finally post such offensive comments. Kamatha's competency as a fitness professional and writings. That four elements should be fulfilled to establish a defamation. In defamation, there has to be a damage that you can claim. I mean, defamation, just the fact that somebody is bad mouthing you or just putting, statements that are untrue, that's not the only thing. I know we dealt with it. We had few points that um, have to be from the legal perspective. It has to, for someone to file a defamation, they have to make sure that there are four elements there. One of them is, you know, uh, the real damage that you have to prove. That's something very difficult. Then what is the other thing? The other thing is that if it is fact that you are, as- you know, that you're bringing out to the public, and it's not untrue, assuming, then it depends on the privacy or the privilege of privacy and the moral obligation and ethical things that may not entirely be regulated by law, but may have an impact in the life of someone, and for that reason that impact has to be translated into a real damage that has to be that has to be uh, substantiated, or it has to be quantified. What is the offense committed by the commenter identified? Defamation.
Mhm.
Um, it's not breach of privacy. It's not trademark infringement. Okay. So B is correct. In the second one, what is the type of defamation that Eric is responsible for?
It's libel.
Slander.
Libel is in writing and
Libel,
slander is verbal.
verbal,
Okay.
exactly. According to the above scenario, what is the defamatory act committed by Eric? Posted offensive comment skills as a blog writer, posted offensive comment competency. Requested her to reframe. All of the above. All of the above. So easy to answer. Fourth one is, what is the medium through which defamation has happened in this scenario? Forum,
Blog.
email, Facebook, blog. And which of the following is our elements required to establish a case of this is important. The fifth one, a publication to one other than the person defamed. Check mark, this is correct. Like, it has to be known by more people, or it has to be known by third party or people other than who is being defamed. A false statement of fact, that is one other element. If the plaintiff is a public figure, he or she must also prove actual malice. Um, yeah, it's not
I would say all of
necessary
the
if,
above.
yeah, all of the above is fine, exactly. But just as a point in C, if the plaintiff is a public figure, he or she must also prove actual malice. Malice means that it's an act that has um, a scheme behind it, or it is intentionally done to cause harm or to tarnish somebody's reputation. So if the higher the reputation, or the based on the fame of that person, or based on the uh, based on the, let's say, wealth of that person, that may be affected. Like a contract may be affected, a business might be affected, personal life may be affected, husband wife relationship may be affected. That means that there is a element of malice behind it, like how the tabloids, they keep following people, famous people, and they don't confirm something, but they just create a lot of interest in the eyes of public, by putting catchy statements and making claims which are not correct. So that would be malice, and they would have a defense saying that it was a fact, it was a factual situation, we're disclosing the fact. So that may have an element of malice to it. E-commerce. Okay, Rachel purchases 3 academic books on business management from OK. However, when the package arrives, she realizes that the book that she has received are not the ones she had ordered. She had ordered new editions instead. In other words, she had received old copies. Okay, she decides to log a complaint. Okay, as the first step, she contacts the store's hotline. It's not in contact the store. This happened, with all of us. A situation like this is typical in e-commerce businesses. Sometimes we do end up getting in this situation. We don't get the right product. So her lawyer states that this is enough to pursue legal action. Yeah. So there was these agreements, like every time we click on those buttons that says I agree, I accept, and all that, not everybody reads terms and conditions, right? I mean, who's going to read it? First of all, none of us are attorneys. We don't know law as well. And then there is, very long agreements that you have to read through. And what if you don't agree with any of those clauses? They're just sitting there. It's not negotiable. So, I mean, you do have to press the agree or accept buttons. These ones we call click wrap. And you remember we did this one. What is
Yes,
the type of yeah, we did this one. What is the type of e-commerce that Rachel is dealing with in this scenario?
B2C.
It's B2C, yeah, business to consumer. What is the type of e-contract that Rachel has entered into? I
Click
think
wrap.
it's click wrap, because you see, that's when you click on the checkbox. Browse wrap, Carol, is the ones that, just by the fact that you are browsing or using their website, it is assumed that you have read terms of using that website. And that
Okay.
is given, those are the agreements that are, there already, and you're not asked to click on it or review them. So those are browse wrap agreements. So there are just 2 kinds that we have to know about: click wrap and browse wrap.
Mhm.
Then we've got email agreements. There is no such thing as email agreements, quite honestly speaking. It's just that it is a type of evidence. It is something that you can use in the court to establish, or to, to take a position in improving your communication records, but it's not an agreement. None of the above is the third one, is the fourth one. But I'd say it's click wraps. So that's what it is, and that's what Steve said. In the third one, what are the key elements of a binding contract? So in a binding contract, And this goes for any contract that you you put it in black and white, as well as any contract that is electronically transmitted. For it to be called a contract or an obligation with responsibilities, liabilities, and agreed terms and conditions, those contracts have to have an offer, which is a tangible offer of something that's to be exchanged or given or accepted. The acceptance on the other side of the contract, and then the consideration is exchange for money or for something that uh, that can be exchanged as not as a barter. It cannot be a barter. So just making a contract that says I'll give you this or I'll give you these pro bono services if you provide me with this type of things. It may not be a binding contract in the sense that the mm, court court does have a lot of case laws in this, because there are situations where pro bono services are exchanged for something as a consideration. That means that someone else would be reciprocating by another set of services. But court finds it difficult to take that as a claim or call it a contract. But then there are things in between that you can claim for. But let's look at it from the point of view of exchange of money. So there has to be actual money exchange. So that is what consideration is. And if all three conditions are met, only then it is a contract. So I'd say will be the correct answer. You need all three elements. Uh, Fourth one says, what are the things that Rachel can use as valid evidence to support her case?
I say D.
Emails she sent. Yes,
Yeah.
all of the above. She has a record of all of these, so you can she can use it as an evidence. So now, even with this evidence, there is an issue which may be difficult to establish, and that is that even if something gets returned, there is a way in which that product needs to be returned in the first place. So unless she sends it back and it is received on the other side as a return, and provided that she has been authorized to send it as an RMA or return merchandise advice with the number and details from the vendor, sometimes that could be um, a practice that is not encouraged by the law, because when transactions happen online, there is a process which needs to be followed, which goes above and beyond these things that are mentioned, like she had made the calls, fine, she has a receipt of payment and all that. But as long as she's holding those goods and those goods are not returned in the manner in which it is supposed to be returned according to the contract, where, before the transaction happens or before you check out, you have agreed to terms that says that you will get a return merchandise authorization before you can send it back. So if that clause is there, then this would be a problem. Second thing is, the goods have to be returned. It should not be in the custody of the party. So if you don't like something, it has to be physically returned, and you should have a tracking, and it should be returned with the authorization. Now, the third thing is that the return of merchandise has a policy of how the packaging, or in what shape and form that return merchandise has to be in when it is received on the other side. So they could say that they didn't receive it proper, or there was a problem with it, or it was opened, or it was, so there could be very, so there is a lot of irritants and a lot of um, loose ends that the consumer is not aware of. So, in the real sense of how it is going to happen, is not just these three things. I'm just telling you outside of what we are discussing as something that practically happens. And then you have to deal with your credit card companies, and then the transaction by all your Visa or whichever credit card you've used, they would do a chargeback. And when they do a chargeback, they need you to build a case, or for you to be able to defend that case. And then there is a merchant contract between the gateway that these vendors use and the vendors themselves, that discourages them from doing something or accepting a chargeback. They call it a chargeback. So if the chargeback is coming through your credit card company, it is a chargeback that is going to impact the gateway or the transaction gateway of the vendor. And then those vendors are in contract with the merchant service that says that if there's going to be a lot of chargebacks, then they're not going to support that those transactions. So there is all sorts of things, and there are too many moving parts in e-commerce business. Okay, the last one says, which of the following laws give validity to the electronic contracts? Computer fraud and abuse, the Communication Decency Act, Privacy
I say
Act,
D.
electronic signatures, and electronic signatures in Global and National Commerce Act. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the acts. So if it is in the book, computer fraud and abuse, it just depends. I mean, if it is a fraudulent company, they're selling junk, or what can you do?
The book,
Communications Decency Act. Communication decency is not in any way acting in this situation. I don't see that just by reading what Communication Decency Act would be. I don't know the act. Privacy Act, no. So more than likely A and D, or between A and D, more than likely.
the book says D.
Okay, then it should be D. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit short in my knowledge with this one. So
I'm
if
cheating. I
it's
have the
D,
book open.
okay, then that should be good. I wrote it, but I forgot to speak.
Well, there's 650 pages. You couldn't remember all of it.
Yeah, and it's still, honestly, I still think that there is a lot of room for me to make the changes. I wouldn't want to put this back in again. I mean, this could be more confusing, more questions than answers, and these are very huge laws and legal books on it. Let's do a bit of internet ethics quickly, just to get introduced. Questions of ethics on the internet. Sometimes it's very hard to define ethics, and for me to just give you a definition would not be enough, because you could find like more than a few definitions on ethics, and each coming from very reliable sources. All it does is causes more confusion. And in the real sense of how we can look at this as issues that we deal with on regular basis, so that we can relate to the ethical concerns that might be part of it. That's going to be um, based on these questions that probably would be, a better way for me to explain where it's coming from. How important is participants' privacy, confidentiality, and anonymity? Now, when we say participants, I guess we are more talking about, the surveys and collecting information through all different means of finding it, primarily finding it on the internet. That's where we are going to focus on. So apart from just the traditional data collection methods, we are going to look at it in the perspective of how the internet plays the role. So in the internet, we do virtual experiments, like social experiments such as videos. We do virtual focus groups, we do virtual interviews, we do surveys, we collect information in so many different ways. But when it comes to participants' privacy, we are talking human subject. We are talking someone's privacy as a human being, someone's confidentiality and anonymity. So unless we have a permission from someone whose work we are using, or who is a primary subject of data collection, or in some way involved in in the making of that information available, there has to be an informed consent, or it has to be a consent that is mutually agreed upon for the use of those information that you're collecting, as well as for the individual to give consent explicitly, knowing the objective of that collection of information, in which this person is either participating or is one of the subjects that's captured for information of sorts. So it has to be communicated in both directions for anyone to actually participate. And this becomes more of a moral obligation, in the sense when you are capturing something that is going on in public space, for instance, even in restaurants where there's lots of people, and you want to capture the interaction of how, let's say, they are being treated by the management of that hotel or that restaurant, for ethnicity reasons or for whatever reasons it may be. That might be part of a social experiment. And even if it is collected unknowingly, um, that somebody just comes in the view of what you're capturing, it becomes your obligation to get back to that individual, to let them know and get their permission, and so on and so forth. So how important it is, it's very important. Is it moral obligation? Yes, it is. But at the same time, you can get away with it because some people may not even know, or the CCTV may be capturing something, and that footage you are using some way. So not coming back and telling that individual that you are part of it, or that person having the knowledge, or acknowledging that it's okay with them, that can be subjective. Like, some people get that acknowledgement, others don't. But it is a moral obligation, as well as a legal, there are legal implications. So the law protects the privacy, confidentiality, but not the anonymity. So anonymity, just the word itself means that it can be an anonymity on account of someone's request, or it could be an anonymity for someone to not be identified, or may not be trackable. So that could be a something that you may want to consider as. um, I'm getting someone's calling me. I'm just going to have to shut this. Where is this coming from?
Maybe you won the lottery and they're telling you.
No, no, this is how is this coming on my system? I'm just wondering. Maybe it's the Skype. Let me break out of this. This happened. It's not going away. Let me see if I can just shut it from the. Mm, There, it is from Skype. Somebody is calling on Skype. Okay, then how about Googling clients? If you get their information on the internet and supposing the reason for you to be looking for someone is to check their background or get some information from their participation in social media accounts, would you be able to use that information to make decisions on someone's um, you know it could be for any reason, for the hiring or it may be an information that you may use as way of making decision on something. So because
It's
it is
used
in the
actually
public
quite,
space.
it's actually used quite frequently, yeah, as you and I've discussed before,
Mm,
now for security clearances,
right.
for US agencies that are trying to find out. One of the things that they tell all of the agents is be sure and look on social media and Google to see if there's anything in there that would make this person susceptible to blackmail.
Mm.
Oh, that's actually
Exactly.
interesting. Because I have, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have like the opposite thing. In my line of work, it's all mental health. They recommend highly against searching clients. You want to keep what you know about your client within the conversations that you have with them for the most part. But like, I can't just go and like Google a client in the middle of me talking about a financial issue with them or something. It's just cool. I'm just spitballing now. That's really interesting.
Um, the opinions that people make these days are they cannot make them or they cannot judge anyone without going and looking them up on the internet. Um, it seems that it has become a common practice. It's nobody is morally. It's just a matter of how you would be able to avoid or not look into something that is available to you or it is there for you to look up quickly and get an idea of sorts. So it's very hard to prevent, first of all. Second is it's just human nature, people, especially in human resource departments, they tend to do it like as a regular practice. But on the other hand, it could work against those who have not paid a lot of attention to their profile updates. Perhaps, there is a private side or there are groups that this individual might be connected to. It could be the private profile versus there could be an official profile you can find on LinkedIn that is generally done more carefully, and in Facebooks you don't see that casual. You see a lot of casualness there because it looks like it's a lot of friends and families and that kind of information. So depending on whether or not you can ignore it or you feel that if it's there you should look it up, it could make a difference between hiring someone or hiring another person instead, if the other person's profile looks better in the comparative situation. So it could it and because it is again a question of whether someone would use it or not use it. Apart from the security issues, if it has to do with making a decision, and we're just going to talk about hiring someone, or even for someone who's getting into a relationship and coming close to getting married, it could make a difference between finding out things or creating more of a personal situation. So it becomes a question of whether someone should or should not be looking it up as a source of information that may or may not be correct or may be inadequate, and at times may contain things in the past which would have, and people have preconceived notions or they have beliefs in something. they have likes and dislikes. So it could be a bias also that one would exercise looking up into these social media accounts for more information. So um, and so on and so forth. So I think it is controversial, but at the same time, it has become a common thing. One has to be careful when they are using the internet, understanding well that it could be a public information that anyone can use. So it is one's own responsibility to uh, so morally, there is no question of morals, there is no question of ethics. But where the question of ethics comes is not just looking at the information, but the use of it. So if you're going to use it in some way of making a choice that could affect someone's life, then it is a matter of ethics, whether or not you should intrude into that zone, um, and to have a larger impact based on your own decisions on somebody's life or livelihood. Then we've got, how about spreading news and shares with social media or Twitter? So that's a common thing. Then again, there is a matter of ethics of how, see, this information is retweeted. This information can be incorrect and would spread very quickly. So there's not much you can do to prevent, even if you find out it is not as correct, or maybe you know somebody enough that you feel that the information that you are getting about this person, or even an event or a company, whatever it may be, if that, in your opinion, is incorrect, first, your responsibility is not to retweet it, especially if you have a lot of followers. Second responsibility is that you have to consider that data as coming from a source which is not as authentic. So there are a lot of obligations and personal views of how you are going to treat that information. Um, Again, it's a matter of judgment. How about writing reviews, opinions, blogs, articles, and sharing links or hijacking someone's content? Obviously, there is a question of ethics there. You cannot use somebody's work because of intellectual property infringements you don't want to do. You don't want to create fictitious opinions just to pad up somebody's website's area where opinions are to be collected and it is vacant. So you take up a job as a ghost writer or a ghost contributor that is just filling it in by writing opinions that may not be original or genuine. And so it continues. So it is a playground. Internet is a playground where anything can happen, and morality and your obligation and responsibility matters, especially if you are doing research work or there is a large dependency on your perception and collection of data and furthering it by processing that into a report format that eventually would be used by someone to make decisions. So that means that you have to be responsible in collecting that information, keeping the integrity of the data that you've collected, citing the sources, so whoever is using that information knows well where it's coming from, so on and so forth. How about forming bias or influencing public opinion? So this happens a lot in terms of, um, if you are a lobbyist or you are a believer in a certain sort of beliefs that you hold very dear to yourself, abortion, human rights, that could be it could be environment, it could be animals, that you want to be part of animal societies, and so you have very strong opinions about something. If I have to write something or to act upon somebody's um, content as anyone who is looking at it critically, or is supposed to be collecting that piece of writing or information for use in my research work, I'll be more influenced uh, by taking or using or having a preference in the content that fulfills my preconceived or my biased or beliefs in certain ideas and in certain situations. So I would be the one who is going to be adding more fuel to the fire by writing something which eventually can be influencing people um, in a biased way. How about online marketing? I mean, right now, I think there is more vandalism, I'd say, on the internet on account of how people are doing marketing and giving false info or writing something which is, it's not the quality material, but rather the kind of sensationalization of something which eventually influence some users or consumers opinion to buy something online. So and then there is a consortium, there are marketers, because now volume is more uh, of a volume, meaning that more volume in terms of followers you have, more likes you have, more opinions you have, more reviews you have. So it's just it's so much volume oriented. So that volume of opinion and things of that sort now has become a domain of marketers that actually are given this task to increase the quantifiable signals for it to influence the search engine or to give a higher ranking or for in some way give more of a priority ranking to any products and services. And then these marketers, they form groups and they create ghost accounts, and they have their followers that are basically following each other, just showing the kind of volume that they hold, which would help them uh, to bring their clients products and services in that um, you know uh, kind of grouped influencers and grouped followers. So the client would feel that so much is actually really being followed as organically as possible when it is all staged. So there is a lot of staging of all this, and it has become a kind of, and of course it is influencing the results of the search engines as well. So it is causing, it is vandalism, really. It's just misuse of. So that could be morally an obligation for someone who is using internet as a market researcher, market influencer, someone who is in this space of giving services. So the moral obligation there. What is the role of AI? Artificial intelligence is a new thing in causing a lot of debate in the ethics of how artificial intelligence that is mechanically inclined and it is programmed, which works automatically and is not mm, uh, as humanly or as human as one would like it to be. And therefore it would be capturing, like in CCTV, it is capturing so much. It is making decision on its own. It is giving rankings, and the biggest example is the search engine itself, which is using a lot of AI automation. So if the machine has to make a decision based on numbers, it does not have a feeling, no sentiments, no realization of facts. Just looking at what it has learned through machine learning, it is causing an issue of ethics because it's no longer a choice that or a control that humans have over it. That is going to be one other issues. Then we have got line between ethics of content sensitivities. Certain things you can say or talk about in certain parts of the world that is considered offensive religiously or culturally. So you have to be aware of that. So there are sensitivities attached to it. And so is about certain issues. Abortion could be one. So one has to know which side of the fence they are sitting on, or perhaps if they are ethically inclined, they would not have any bias, but rather act neutral when these topics are coming into play. What about fakes on the internet? Outright matter. It's not a matter of ethics only. It's just a matter of what your responsibility is in, or who you're delivering that information which you are collecting. So if it has to go somewhere where it needs to be vetted carefully, then it is your ethical responsibility to verify it, have all the right tools to do that. What are ethical limitations of freedom of speech and net neutrality? So, I mean, again, another controversy. So freedom of speech, does that mean that you can put anything on the web or anything that you feel like, then there is a legal boundaries which is going to protect consumers' rights, going to protect you against libel and slander. There would be, other issues that you may run into legally. But from the ethics perspective, if um, internet is where you can put any kind of material, um, then there are laws and there are societies and there are certain concerns which may boil down to socio-economic and cultural values that are held. So if you divide it into Western society, North America versus Eastern Europe versus Middle East, things would appear different, and the ethics of what can be uploaded comfortably without causing any harm or without impacting sensitivities would come into play. So that is an issue or part of the ethics. Then what else we are left with? I'm just trying to wrap it up because we're just coming towards the end. So, there are just few slides. So just bear with me. It's finishing up soon. At its simplest, is defining ethics. It's moral principles and how people make decisions and lead their lives. Ethics is concerned with what is good for individuals and societies. Again, this is debatable. Matlab, how can one say what is good or not? Who is to say one thing that is good for one society is not the best for the other society? Society uh, can be at any level. Society in the general sense can be Western or more advanced or more more outside of the third world, say. How would the role of internet be played by those who are using it in those areas, so that becomes a kind of a decision that the society dictates. Okay, so when the society dictates something, it is a question of whether or not it is good for the whole community, whether it is religiously in conformity, whether it is it is following what is uh, to be to be human rights concerned, what is to be environmental concerns. So it depends on the sensitivities and awareness of those societies to call something good or bad or whatever. So this is just giving a general idea. There is no specific definition of what ethics is. Just your mannerism, your moral values with which you grow up somewhere and which you adopt and which is approved by the which is supported by the legal system. So that's what the ethics is. Benefits of studying ethics: avoids conflict, respect for common grounds of understanding, displays one's professionalism. Now, this one, which is talking about one's professionalism, is another layer, which means that if anything has to do with your working as a professional in any kind of work, made it could be anything, if you are associated with or affiliated with or handed over a degree or a certification, um, and that affiliation of yours would ensure that you follow a certain ethical regulations or follow certain ethics or principles of how the profession looks at it as a society or as an organization, so that you continue to remain to be their member or their associated person who has been given this degree or these credentials based on an agreement which is beyond just the piece of paper that you get for credentials. And that means that for you to remain, uh, remain to be part of the profession or part of the society, you must follow those guidelines. And these guidelines are going to dictate what is ethically or how ethically responsible you have to be as a profession. Um, Adopt more professional behavior in an online platform and gain confidence anyway. So ethics dilemma. Okay. Ethics dilemma is guiding principles of ethics. Okay. This is not important. One thing, guiding principles for internet. How would you know? There is no one single book that says that by reading this book, you will learn everything about what ethics is for using the internet, because there are different societies and different regulators and different international associations that sort of gives guidelines on how to use internet or what internet ethics is. But primarily, they're going to touch upon, like I said, the subject of privacy, intellectual property, collection of data, human subject. Those are the primary ones. Then there is one that is going to talk about the sliding scale, or where your responsibility is higher for collecting information from individuals that are vulnerable, or the vulnerable population. What could that be? Vulnerable means elderly, those that are handicapped in some way, those individuals that are minors, those that are they may be going through some mental issues or psychological situations. So you have to be very careful in using them as a subject. There is a very high level of responsibility for you collecting information from them. And one of the reasons, of course, is that it could be part of the medical record. But on the other hand, vulnerability could also mean that they do not understand what the study is about, or what the objective is, or how their data is going to be used, and to who this data is going to be delivered. So all this information they need to understand well. And in the case of minors, of course, you have to obtain consent from the parents. And one of the conditions of interviewing children could be, unless it is special conditions, they have to have their adults present or their parents present. So that is the vulnerable community you have to be careful about. So there is a higher level of responsibility. Due consideration of principle of ethics related to research on human subjects. See, this is where it's going to cover it. Um, when you are talking about ethics from the researcher's perspective, the ethics issue actually starts from the very moment that you design your data collection policies and data collection methods that you select. So every step of how the research takes place, from collection of data to preservation of the data, ensuring integrity of the data, uh, how you're going to analyze that data, there is always an element of ethics attached to it. How that research is going to be utilized, like who is going to use it, where it's going to go, if it is well, let's not even go what different conditions might be, but every single stage might require the research to be not only careful, but be aware that you are morally obligated to ensure that anything used in your research is being obtained, used, organized, and delivered um, in a way that does not compromise your ethics of how you have, you know, gone through this process. Even sampling techniques um, would have an element of using some sort of a scientific method or methodology that is the industry norm. It should really be proactive and really be probability sampling. So there is a moral obligation to have some basis of how you've collected the sample. Just giving you examples. Then there is another example that I can think of, like where that research is being used. Is that information collected for clinical research by a reputable company that has authority and a license to do that under the law, or it is the information you're just putting together, or you have found a way to get it? Um, it could be privileged information, provided it is not a privacy breach and you have a reason for collecting it, and assuming that you're giving it away to a client. You have to, it's your moral obligation to make sure that the client is entitled to receive that, or that information is being used in the same way as the same way as you would have assumed that it would not be mm, it not it may not be used by marketing companies, as an example, or companies that are using that records for a reason other than what they're authorized or what legally they're authorized to do. Ethical decision making is deliberative process, and researchers should consult as many people and resources. So that means that there is no single resource that's going to tell you exactly what the internet ethics are. So you have to look at ethics guidelines, published papers, matters of governance, society. There could be 10 different resources. So for whatever subject you're researching on, there would be some resource that you can Google and check that might be giving you an idea of what is ethically acceptable. Again, not a whole lot of subject on ethics is legally or is captured under the law, or it is governed under the law. So there is a lot of loopholes in there. Um, Again, I'm not saying that for just for collecting the data, there could be some guidelines, but at the same time, law would protect it also for privacy and all that, and intellectual property is protected. But there are certain zones in there which would require for you um, to apply your best judgment, whether you feel that you need to disclose something, you should. And division in ethics of internet research, there is a bit of a controversy, or you could say that there is a bit of a concern when the ethical issues are brought to light in matters of, or if the matters are discussed at a level that ensures certain guidelines are implemented. They're going to look at two things. One is what tools you have used, like research tools, to gather the information, and where you have collected that information. That's going to be one side, which means when you talk about research tools, you're talking about whether it's coming from the real source of first-hand information, it's coming from internet, or data that you have collected is purely coming from tools that are doing data scraping, because that is not vetted, that is not something that you would think of as a reliable source. And then preserving that and putting it in a more organized way. If that organization or structuring of how you're going to segregate it, or making it into tables, that has to make sense. So the more granular the data is, the more valuable it is, because then it becomes available for what you call the relationship designing and for analytics. So it's always best to have it in a more granular form. So research tools and where that information is collected. For instance, if that information is coming from, or you're scraping it from forums or groups or chat rooms, where is it coming from? If it is coming from chat rooms, then of course there is privacy issues. Forums, of course, you have to see the subject, you have to see if it is original, if the forum is reputable, if the groups within the forums that you are using, if those groups are having a conversation that makes sense and there's no element of um, someone giving their opinions based that is they have a very strong opinion. It's less of a discussions, let's say, in the forum, and more of statements and beliefs and things of that nature. So depending on what platform you have used, because forum is less regulated, chat rooms are even far less regulated. Groups have a certain mediations or certain ways of or certain rules of use, and so on and so forth. So the venue is important, the type of data is important. Second one says whether internet research is engaged or non-intrusive. If it is engaged, then likelihood is that you have interacted with individuals and you have collected documents and both parties know what it is about, and the more participants are in there, that means it is kind of easy for you to track to the source itself, and that is engaged and therefore higher value. Or is it non-intrusive? Non-intrusive is observation. It could be biased also. It could be anything that you have collected as you do in the process of memoing something, event that you are copying, anything that you are writing a note on. So that is non-intrusive, and people who are part or subject of the collection of that information are not aware of it. So to what extent you should let them know this is the activity you're doing, why you're doing, and all that. So letting them know and having that mutual understanding that such and such data is now captured and you're in it, and how you're going to use that information. So there are two things, which is what we call division. Division is not really division in the sense of two school of thoughts, but division in how these two come together to give, distinguish, and differentiate on account of how the information is collected, venue, where it was being intrusive or non-intrusive. So there's where more of the ethical concerns are applied. Key ethical issues in the internet: understanding human subject, public and private information, informed consent. I've explained it. I've explained anonymity, confidentiality, and revealing identities. Revealing identities is very important because a lot of times you were asked to use pseudonyms if these are very sensitive topics or very personal topics. People don't want to disclose their names. Even in journalism, there are anonymous resources or anonymous sources that are intentionally kept, uh, are not disclosed. So revealing identities is a matter of ethics also. You have to follow that. However, as a researcher, you have the obligation to keep a record or a log that may not be public, but you have to have those records with identified individuals that gave that information. So that is by law. So it has to be there. Recruitment is a process that, again, sampling is one of them. Recruitment means that you are going to be approaching subjects or human subjects that has to have specific attributes, or they have to you have to create, let's say, a homogeneous sample of sort with the subject that has to have a relationship with those individuals as a group. So you have to do recruitment, which means you proactively have to look for those individuals, and under contract you have to engage them in some studies. So that is a process of recruitment, not recruitment in the sense of how the recruitment is done in HR departments. So this is the recruitment for sampling. Copyright, ebooks, contract disclaimers. So all of these might be things that you have to be concerned about for either writing a disclaimer. Disclaimers that you write would not have to say that you are not responsible for the goods. I mean, those disclaimers are irresponsible and therefore legally incorrect, or there is what you call a flawed contracts and disclaimers that may be considered illegal. So you have to watch out for that. Contracts, it should be mutual. It should be benefiting both parties. It should never be one-sided. So that's what you have to look at. Ebooks, copyrights, it's all intellectual property, and anything that, since it is mentioned ebooks, I guess they're talking about plagiarism and copyrights. So again, just ethics, just something that you have to be responsible for and assume responsibility, and at least understand the legal side of what your liabilities might be as researchers, and at all times protect yourself by reducing the risk in understanding that some of the ethical issues have very deep roots within the legal system, and the law would be protecting it, at least to an extent which you should be aware of. So with this, we get done with your entire CIRS course. It's been 34 hours of your dedication and for persevering, and thank you, especially Steve, for being there all the time, and Carol. Didn't see others, and I would have to, wish them well, because it is a recording they're going to see. I would say that I wish them well for passing the exam, CIRS. And thank you, Steve. Anything that you have to say? Everything was all right so far?
Just to thank you for all the hard work that you put into this. It's been a fantastic course.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure and an opportunity for me to share something with others, things that I know of, things that I would like to work further in and give you even better material, and hopefully would see you again and some of the other webinars or any other program that we get into. And for sure, Steve, we are going to work on the investigative research. I thought about it, things that I want to put together in writing and send it to you. So we hopefully will be in touch. And Carol, you as well, if you have anything to ask or anything to do with the exams that I can help you with that, but send me an email and I'll make myself available. So thanks again, and all the best, eh?
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Get some
Thank you.
rest.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, I will. Okay, thanks again for that.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Good
Good
night.
night.